Hoping to start a family are delaying or giving up entirely as the cost of housing skyrockets. The nation's birth rate has dropped to an all-time low. Leith Van Onselen, chief economist and co-founder of Macro Business. Leith, good morning to you. Why should I worry about how many children people have?
Yeah, well, I mean, it obviously has an impact on individual families. So most people who you grow up, you get married, etc. And one of the goals in life is to have children and raise your own family. And so it obviously has personal consequences if people can't afford to do so because of high cost of living. And also affects Australia's long-term demography as well. If people have less children, you'll have an ageing population, etc., etc. But the bigger impact is the social impact. Australians should be able to have children if that's what they choose, but if they're precluded from doing so because of the high cost of living, the high cost of housing, etc., that's obviously not a good thing.
So, Leith, of course, confidence is tracked by all sorts of organisations. I'm wondering, is the only number or data point that you need with regard to confidence is birth rate?
Yeah, look, it's certainly one of the better ones, and the Australian birth rate's obviously collapsed. And I will be fair though, it has fallen across most developed countries. Certainly the cost of living is biting in Australia, and that's obviously lowering the birth rates. People are less confident and they can't afford it, and that is obviously a very, very good measure of confidence. There are other ones as well, like the Westpac and ANZ consumer confidence surveys, which are tracking near recessionary levels, which kind of backs this up.
The people I know who haven't had children haven't had them because they don't want them.
Yeah. Look, there's always going to be households who obviously don't want children for whatever reason, but there are also households who want children who have been precluded from having children because of the high cost of housing, high cost of living, etc. So that's always the case.
So Leith, have you got a percentage? So what percentage of households that want children have decided that they're not going to have them because they can't afford them?
No, I don't have that information, but if you look at the aggregate rates of the aggregate birth rate, it's obviously collapsed to a record low. And just anecdotally speaking to people, there's a whole bunch of people I've met who've had, say, one child, they can't afford to have two, they would have liked to have had two, etc. That's pretty common throughout society. And I will add that there was some research that came out this year by HSBC in January, and that showed that a 10% increase in house prices leads to a 1.3% drop in birth rates. And also found that when rents rise, it also leads to a drop in birth rates. And we've obviously had soaring housing costs, house prices, as well as soaring rents recently, and that's obviously having an impact on the birth rate.
Leith, I'm struggling to remember. I reckon I'm right. Growing up, the government used to have a name for something, for money they would give people to have children. I can't remember. I'm not talking baby bonus.
No, endowment.
Child endowment.
Yeah, it was introduced by Harold Holt, during the Second World War.
Yeah. So is there an argument for a child endowment?
Yeah, potentially. But the bigger systemic issue is the cost of housing. I think that the better solution is to try and solve this housing issue. And look, this is going to be controversial, but the number one way to do that is to actually cut the rate of immigration. So if you take Melbourne, for example, Melbourne's population at the turn of the century was 3.5 million people. We're currently about 5.4 million people. We've grown by more than 50% this century. It's ridiculous. And Melbourne's projected to grow to 9 million people by 2056. Now, that is almost entirely due to immigration. And it's not just the cost of housing, it's also the fact that we're going to force future families to live in high-rise shoebox apartments, which are totally unconducive to having children. And if we keep going down this road, the birth rate's going to keep collapsing. And it's going to be harder and harder for people to afford to have children.
Well, good on you. It's self-evident, isn't it? And then you see governments stand up there hand-wringing about the housing problem when they're the cause.
Absolutely. Look. The federal government is pumping unbelievable numbers of people into Australia's major cities. As I said, it took Melbourne 170 years to get to 3.5 million people at the turn of the century, and we're supposed to grow by 5.5 million people in the next 56 years to 9 million people by 2056. So it just doesn't add up. If we're going to keep fire hosing people into Melbourne and other places, we're going to force people to live in high-rise shoeboxes. They're obviously not going to be able to afford to have children, or it's not going to be conducive to have children because you cannot raise people in 2-bedroom, 1-bedroom shoeboxes.
Wow. Good on you, Leith. I mean, we spoke to an economist about this last time also, another sober-minded economist from Sydney who said that there is too much immigration in Australia.
Yeah.
It is